Hello, and welcome to episode 8, all about chapter 11, A Knife in the Dark, from Fellowship of the Ring, being the 8th part of That's What I'm Tolkien About. Hello, I am Mary Clay. If that's too complicated for you, just call me MC. And today I am joined by Ryan from the Sorta Star Wars podcast. Welcome, Ryan.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk about Lord of the Rings from a kind of a Star Wars perspective, because I know...
Yeah, I'm excited too.
I'm sure a lot of people listening have that crossover in their fandoms. How did you
welcome
get into...
as well to the podcast. It's always important for the guests to welcome the host as well. So
yes, thank you for that.
Yeah, you bet. So what was the question?
How did you get into Lord of the Rings?
So back in when Lord of the Rings, the movies were coming out, I forget what year it was, but I went to the theater and my brothers wanted to see the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring movie. I had no clue what it was about. So I thought, well, I'll just go along with them. They told me it's about some ring and it's a bad ring and it needs to be destroyed or something. So I'm like, okay, that sounds fun. So then I go with them to this movie. I'm watching all 3 hours of this movie. I'm like, oh, this is a pretty good movie. And then all of a sudden it ends and the ring is not destroyed. I'm like, what in the world is happening here? And then I realize, oh, it's part 1 of 3. I had no idea it was a 3-part movie. So the whole time I'm thinking the movie's going to end with everything resolved, and nothing was resolved at the end. It just kind of, and so I was like, okay.
Exactly.
So I need to know the rest of this story. And I really liked the movie. So then before Two Towers, the movie came out, I read all 3 books.
Wow.
And I just loved it. So
that's pretty awesome that the movie alone, you were like, let me find out more about these things.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I'm totally with you there. That was my exact same thought watching the movie I was watching it on my computer, so I could kind of like hover my mouse and see how much time was left. And I saw there was like 5 minutes left. I was like, wait, but they still have the ring and they're
resolved.
Like nowhere near Mount Doom.
Right.
I'm like Pippin and Merry are being carried off by people, and Sam is going after Frodo in a lake, and they still have the ring. This isn't right.
It's very confusing. It was 8th grade or something around there. I forget when exactly, but I was not comprehending what was going on. But yeah, that next year I went into those books pretty hard. I remember just like sitting on the couch for hours, and we had this grandfather clock that would ding every like 15 minutes like they do. I just was like keeping track of my mind, how fast I was trying to get through these books, and the clock was ringing, and it was just like, I just remember being on the couch for hours reading through these books. And that was probably like the first like real books I read through. Like I had read some other ones in like school required books, but these were like legitimate like
it's a hefty
not
book.
Like kids' books. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I remember reading it the first time, and once I was rereading it again now, I'm like, man, I forgot how Tolkien writes. It's like crazy. I don't think I fully understood it when I was a kid. And now it's just like the amount of detail. Of course, everyone talks about the amount of detail he goes into. It's just absolutely insane. Yeah,
It's crazy. Yeah, you talk about trying to read it as a 8th grader and not comprehending it. I'm an adult and I still have to like go back and reread something again, or just to like try and follow along and figure out what the heck is going on.
And he's like always giving directions, like I know what he's talking
about.
Like,
oh my gosh, you get it.
And east was the hills and west was where. I was just like, I don't know where you're talking about. Like I've never been here. So
you get it. This has been one of the things that I've been griping about since the beginning. Is that so? In my version of the book, I only have a map of. It literally says a part of the Shire, and it is only useful for about chapters 1 through 5. And then after that, they've left the area of the map that my book gives. So when he's like, they're eastward of the river and westward of the valley, and I'm like, I don't know where you are. Stop wasting words telling me where you are relative to other locations that I don't know where those are also.
Even here where I live, people are like, oh, you just head east on 283. And I'm like, what? I don't know what direction that is.
You need to tell me left or right.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, do I go to this road and take a left or a right? I don't know east or what. Like, I'm not carrying a compass around with me here.
Give me directions from the closest sheets, and then I'll know which way you're going. So
yeah, that's right. Exactly. Awesome. Cool. Well, let's jump right into chapter 11, A Knife in the Dark, which sounds super ominous.
Yeah, very, very suspicious.
Yeah, and it starts off very ominous too. So the last we saw of Fatty Bulger was, I believe, back in chapter 5 maybe, and Pippin, Merry, Sam, and Frodo had left him behind to stay at Frodo's new place in Crick Hollow and kind of pretend that Frodo was still there. And that's the last we saw of Fatty Bulger. And he makes an appearance again here, unfortunately. It was kind of like a weird thing for me to read, where it was kind of like a, meanwhile, back in Crick Hollow.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like, how did Fatty end up with that job? Like, did he volunteer for it, or Frodo? I don't know if they talked about that in the story. I just missed it. Like they drew straws or what.
Yeah, I think I remember Fatty Bulger was like, well, I'm not going in the old forest, so y'all have fun with that. I'll stay here and just try my luck here. So
okay. And his luck wasn't great in this very first part here.
He is at Frodo's home and kind of has a sneaking suspicion that something is going on, and he is right, and there are 3 Black Riders, dun dun dun. And so he runs all the way to the nearest other person's house or other hobbit's house, and they sound the alarms and I guess scare the Black Riders away. Yeah. And that's essentially what happens there, is that you find out that the Black Riders now know that Frodo is not in Crick Hollow, which is kind of confusing because in the previous chapter, I thought there were Black Riders that showed up at the Prancing Pony. Mm-hmm. So I guess there are more.
I'm trying to remember if they say how many were at the Prancing Pony. Can't remember if they gave a number on that, but we know there was a couple there, and now there's a couple here, so it doesn't really say if it's the same ones or different ones or more.
I guess Sauron sent out another round of Black Riders when the first ones weren't showing up with the hobbits after the first day.
This is taking too long.
Yeah.
Send more out.
Yeah, exactly. Sending out the second wave. Also, okay, going back to Fatty Bulger though, I thought it was kind of odd. I get that he was trying to act normal, and by doing that he needed to be in Frodo's house, and I guess Frodo wanted to be away from the hubbub of Crick Hollow, I guess, or away from other people. But if you're Fatty Bulger and you're like, I'm basically a sitting duck right now waiting for evil people to come here, wouldn't you want to go? Because he makes a note that the next house is over a mile away. Wouldn't you want to wouldn't you want to move a little bit closer to other people if you're just waiting? Yeah, maybe the real estate isn't that good there.
Poor Fatty Bulger.
I know, he really gets a short
I feel like he got that name Fatty Bulger for a reason. You know what I mean? Poor guy. And he has to run a mile away from these 3 Black Riders on horses.
He's not going to be. Yeah, he's not.
I don't know if I would.
He's not Fatty anymore. He's Skinny Bulger after this one.
Yes. Yeah. I did like how Tolkien kind of describes the Black Riders in this one. You talked about this chapter being, or the title of the chapter being ominous. He says, shadows of stones and shades of night, which I thought was pretty, you kind of just get the idea that they're just moving shadows. You know what I mean? And if they're standing still, you can't even tell that they're there.
Yeah.
Which, if I was Fatty in this house that was surrounded by these Black Riders, I would be absolutely terrified.
I know, man. So, maybe, I guess we should give Fatty Bulger more credit where credit is due, because I don't know if I would have chosen to stay behind.
He's the unsung hero.
Yeah, Fatty Bulger's the unsung hero of Lord of the Rings.
That'll be another one of the spin-off movies.
Yeah. So there's that fun little meanwhile in Crick Hollow, and then we jump back to where are they? The Prancing Bree Land. I forget what the name of the city is. The Prancing Pony. So they were correct in their assumption that the Hobbits' rooms would be attacked. They wake up and they had been all shredded, and because I think they said that they stuffed the Hobbits' beds with fake Hobbits, I guess. And I guess that trick worked and threw the riders or whoever off their game. But this is just a funny...
It worked in Ferris Bueller, so why not do it in this in this story as well.
Yeah, I don't think it's as elaborate as a setup, which, I don't know, I just kind of think the setup was weird, because why would you bother, I don't know, I get, like, would it give them, like, 5 extra minutes, I guess? Because it's not even like they came after them, because the Hobbit stayed at the Prancing Pony or in another room that wasn't basically showing as a beacon to be like, hey, the hobbits are staying in the hobbits' rooms. Anyway, and so they, I think this is a great like commentary on Butterbur. So in the previous episode, I ripped Butterbur a new one because he is useless. Previously on That's What I'm Talking About, Butterbur is the obnoxious reason behind why everything has been going wrong, because he forgot to give a forking letter to Frodo. No, he forgot to send it to the Shire. Yeah. It's ridiculous. And so it says, poor Mr. Butterbur looked sleepy and frightened. He had hardly closed his eyes all night, so he said, but he had never heard a sound. So I just love also these quick asides from Tolkien about just the parentheses, so he said, that he didn't sleep at night, that completely change the like context of the sentence, or like add a little bit of character, just that like little extra bit of characterization that just make it so much more fun to read. Because if he hadn't added the so he said, you would have thought, oh, Butterbur stayed up all night and the Dark Riders were so stealthy that he didn't even hear them. But adding that so he said comment implies that no, he fell asleep on duty and then lied about it, which is probably,
he was supposed to be keeping watch.
Which is probably the more accurate statement. So, and then they also find out that all of the ponies are gone. And I wrote down, not the ponies! Like, they almost slaughtered the hobbits, but God forbid they touch the ponies.
Those poor beasts. And other beasts. Yeah. They say other beasts were let out as well.
So they, at first I was actually worried that the ponies and everything got like slaughtered or eaten or something, but I think it's implied that they just ran off and got scared. Right. But I like this, I don't know, it just kind of makes me laugh that I guess, does this mean there's a communal barn for the entire town?
Where everybody puts their stuff.
Because the problem that they encounter is that all of the horses and everything are gone in the entire town, and so they don't have a horse to use for traveling or for their baggage and stuff, except for this really old horse, which we'll get to in a second. But I just think it's funny that like this town has a communal barn where all of the animals live.
And could they not go find the ponies? They were that far away that they couldn't find them? I guess
all the horses and animals and stuff got spooked. And I like that, I don't know if it happens now or later on, but at one point Tolkien gives us like a pony update, and he lets the reader know that, no, don't worry, the ponies are actually fine. They went back to the forest and they found Tom Bombadil, and Fatty McGee, I think, is the horse.
He cared for them.
I'm trying to find, I can't remember.
Yeah, it's because once they buy that one from Ferny, they were able to buy one from Ferny, the almost dead one, and Butterbur pays for it. Then Tolkien goes back and says, but Butterbur ended up okay because they found the ponies, and then Tom Bombadil. Yeah, the
horse's name is Fatty Lumpkin, by the way. I knew I would have gotten like tweets about this because Fatty Lumpkin is it's a great name for a horse. But I like that we got this update from Tolkien.
Can't forget Fatty Lumpkin.
Everything worked out okay in the end. So here, we'll backtrack a second. So yes, they come in and announce that all the horses are gone, and the hobbits are like, this isn't good, because now we're going to have to walk on foot, which will take us much longer, and it'll be very tiring, and we won't be able to pack as much supplies as we'll need for the trip anymore. And so they go around frantically trying to find any horse at all, and all they find in the town is this horse from this like gross old man. What's his name? Bill Ferny.
But they were all upset except for Mary.
Yeah.
He was actually pretty excited.
So
I think if you have like one of those like Facebook quizzes, like which Lord of the Rings character are you? I think I would be Mary. Same. Because while everyone else is worried, Mary's like, oh, great. Now we can have a regular breakfast. We can sit down and have a full breakfast.
Yeah, I wrote that down.
Before they were just...
I wrote that down. So they're all in a panic, like, oh no, we need to look for the horses. Okay, don't worry, we'll figure it out. And then meanwhile, Mary goes, there is one crumb of comfort, and more than a crumb, I hope. We can have breakfast while we wait. Always looking on the bright side. So I've been kind of a unintentional advocate for Mary as the best hobbit, because everyone's always like, oh, Pippin's the best one. I think Mary is the best because he is the one with all of the common sense. He doesn't get as spooked as the other ones. I mean, granted, that's not a very high compliment because he still gets spooked very easily, but he kind of keeps his head about things, and then he'll also just have comments like this where I'm like, yeah, you get it, Mary.
So I know, listening to some of your past episodes, you're not a huge Sam fan. Is that changing at all as you get farther in the story?
Yeah, and actually, it's funny because we'll get to that in a short second, but it's really interesting now reading these especially this chapter, because there are a lot of things that Sam is doing that seem very un-Sam to me. Yeah. And it seems like he's kind of becoming a bit more braver, a bit more sure of himself than he was at the beginning of the story.
Yeah, for sure.
Great question. It's like I literally wrote that note down that it seems like Sam is going through some kind of internal, I don't know, changes or whatever as he's experiencing the world. Yeah.
Well, and a note that I had made in this chapter, it seems like they're finally starting to get the urgency of the situation.
Yes.
Before they were just taking their time, and Gandalf's like, get out of the Shire, and they're like, well, okay, but I got some stuff to do around here first, and then they're later Gandalf's like, no, get out of the Shire now, Yeah. So now when they're like, okay, well, last night we almost died, maybe we should kind of switch our thinking
this
a
along,
little bit
exactly.
Here. Yeah.
Which I'm all about the urgency, because things have been so slow moving up until this point. There were 3 chapters that lasted over the span of 2 days. Which is a funny contrast, because we'll get to that in a second. So they get this sickly, elderly, skinny horse that basically looks like it's about to die anyway, from Bill Ferny, which I kind of just picture to be the, I don't know, old man Crockett or whatever of the town, and everyone. He just seems like such a vile person. And they make a comment that, well, the horse doesn't look that great, but I imagine once he's no longer with Bill Ferny, he'll be much better.
Right. He'll have no reason to go back to Bill Ferny after we take him.
Exactly, yeah. And basically saying that, you might be taking him on a, perilous journey where the horse could be put in danger and it might die, but honestly, it's probably better than staying with Bill Ferny. He would much prefer that. Yeah. So they get this horse for much more, or they have to pay for much more than they should, because Bill Ferny knows that they are in desperate need of a horse, and he takes advantage of that.
Typical Bill. Just typical.
Gosh darn you, Bill Ferny! Yeah, and Butterbur pays for it. I think they make the note that Butterbur paid for it because he felt bad, or he felt part of this was his fault, which technically it is, because he forgot to send that letter to the Shire, that if he had sent it to the Shire, they would have left on time. They would have been able to meet up with Gandalf when Gandalf said he could meet up with them. Whatever. There's
Gandalf is very... You have yet to see Gandalf again since the very beginning of the book.
Oh my gosh. We get
really need to get some cell phones in here.
Get kind of a glimpse of him in this chapter, but it's literally you're reaching out and he's just a couple inches away from where you can reach or something, and it's just hopeless. Yeah. It's he's so close. We think.
Maybe it's possible.
Yeah. So they get on the road. Oh, also, I don't know why this just made me laugh, but I didn't realize until now that the staff of the Prancing Pony are named Bob and Nob. Yes. And that just gave me a good chuckle, because I was like, I didn't realize that they were named Bob and Nob, but you know what? Yeah. It makes sense.
Sounds like a morning show duo.
Bob and Nob. Hi, you're listening to 83.9 FM with Bob and Nob. What's going on? Listener, you're on.
It's perfect.
Bob and Nob. That would be great.
Yeah.
if I had like enough creative spirit in my body, I mean, like I am a creative person, but I also lack follow through. I would totally create like a spin-off fictional podcast called Bob and Nob, and it would be like Bob and Nob narrating, like doing a like weekly radio show from Middle Earth,
the happenings of Breeland.
Every now and then they like mention an update about like, yeah, these four Hobbiton hobbits came into town last night and it was a really fun party, but then one of them like weirdly disappeared and then reappeared again a second later, and then what do you know, later that night our town got attacked and all of our horses and cows disappeared. It was really weird. So anyway, the weather forecast for tomorrow shows partly sunny skies, and
I like how like this is like the most exciting thing it seems like that's ever happened in this town. Like it's like all people are talking about the next day, and like they're like, this is the most exciting thing that's happened here in years. And like, well, I guess a person disappearing is pretty special, but it's just kind of funny how much like people
and they've caused a lot of trouble. That was another point I made in the previous episode, which as we're recording hasn't come out yet, but is that the hobbits are like the worst at, like, they're supposed to be on this like secret mission and they're hiding from evil beings, and they are the worst at it. Like,
it calls so much attention to themselves.
Oh my gosh, they're awful. Which is why it's like, oh, God bless Strider / Aragorn.
Right.
For meeting up with them, tracking them down, and joining their party, because he will save them all. They would die immediately. So Aragorn makes the same observation as they're about to leave. So originally he's like, oh, we're going to go on the side route and we're going to go through the woods. We're not going to follow the main path. If we follow the main path, the riders will be able to follow us quicker. So I'll lead the way, no problem. But as they are slower to prepare, in their preparing to leave and finding the horse and everything, more and more, there's all this hubbub about the horses being gone and something happening at the Prancing Pony, and these hobbits are here. And Strider / Aragorn he notices this and is like, okay, forget that. We're just going to follow the main path for a little bit because we're probably going to have like a parade of people following us. And that's exactly what happens. They get on the road. Right. Yeah, they get on the road and everyone's like, woo, yeah, we don't know what you're doing, but this is exciting.
Like, they need to follow them out of town because what they say, they don't want any trespassing or anything like that. It's like, we need to follow these characters out of town, these four little people out of town. It's just funny.
Yeah, these four tiny people, their skinny, dying horse, and then this tall man who seems to be the only one that knows what's going on.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to have much respect in that area, Strider. Like, Butterbird doesn't talk about him very nicely, and then Bill Ferny, as they're walking out, says some comments about him too, and it's just, I guess people don't really like Strider too much. Not sure why.
Yeah, because up until...
Or maybe it's Rangers in general, maybe. I'm not sure.
I guess, like, from the perspective of maybe Butterbeer and the bar and everything, the Rangers are these group of people who probably just, like, come and go as they please. And so I guess, I don't know, maybe it's not, like, maybe they're not, like, steady business, or maybe when they do come, maybe they are always drunk tippers. And cause a lot of cause a lot of troubles. And Strider in particular is kind of aloof, and he's like, when he's introduced in the Prancing Pony chapter, he's just like sitting in the dark corner by himself with the hood over his face. I don't know. I can imagine that from a like bar owner being like, these people drive away business because they're weird and scary.
Right. Yeah. Bill Ferny calls him Longshanks.
Yeah.
As they're heading out of
town.
What
a like weird like insult to give someone. Longshanks.
I don't even know what that means.
That's like the name of Hermione's cat. Crookshanks.
Oh, Crookshanks. Yeah, Crookshanks.
Like, what a weird... It's like, hey... You got long legs.
You with the long legs. You're a loser.
And so as they're on their journey out of town, Bill Ferny is kind of making all these like obnoxious comments. And Sam, this is when I like my mouth fell open a little bit because I was like, Samuel, Samwise Gamgee. So, Bill Ferny says, "Morning, my little friends," he said to the others. "I suppose you know who you've taken up with? That's Stick at Knot Strider. That's quite a mouthful for a mean nickname.
Yeah.
But
I don't even know what it means.
Stick at Knot Strider. How do you... I don't know. Though I've heard other names not so pretty. Watch out tonight. And you, Sammy, don't go ill-treating my poor old pony." Sam turned quickly. "And you, Ferny," he said, "put your ugly face out of sight or it will get hurt." With a sudden flick, quick as lightning, an apple left his hand and hit Bill square on the nose. He ducked too late and curses came from behind the hedge. "Waste of a good apple," said Sam regretfully.
Hide your ugly face or you'll get hurt. It's like such a generic insult.
Yeah, and then he hurts him anyway.
That's how the insults are in the Shire all the time.
I was just so surprised that Sam not only said something, kind of mean to someone. He not only shouted what he thought was super mean and insulting, but he also threw something at it. He threw food. Hobbits love food. It's a big deal that he A, yelled at someone or insulted someone, B, threw something at him, and C, the thing that he threw was food.
I like how he acknowledges it, that it was a waste of a good apple.
Waste of a good apple, yeah.
But it does say he had a pocket full of apples, which I don't know what kind of pants they wear, but a pocket full of apples would be one apple, I would think. I don't know.
It's pocket full. Pocket Full of Apple is the sequel to Natasha Bedingfield's song Pocket Full of Sunshine.
Pocket Full of Sunshine. That's the Hobbiton version of it.
I got a pocket full of apples.
The Weird Al Yankovic of Hobbiton changed the song to Pocket Full of Apples.
So that was one of the first, so like I was talking about earlier, there are some things that Sam does that is very, I think, surprising. It just goes to show that he's become, the things that they've experienced and gone through have kind of made him a little bit less naive. Because at the beginning of the story, he's like a child.
Right. Definitely. I think he just doesn't get the weight of what they're going to have to go through. With Strider coming to the picture and kind of explaining stuff, he's like, oh, okay. So I got to be serious about this. It's not just a walk through the woods.
Yeah, he's realizing finally the extent of this is pretty serious. We're not just, because the reason he's so excited to go with Frodo in the first place is because he's like, I'm going to get to see elves. Yeah. That'll be so fun. And then they saw the elves, I think, in chapter 3. And after that, he's like, well, we've already seen the elves, so I guess it's downhill from here. Yeah. I don't know. So I think all of them, too, are realizing that, wow, this is a pretty serious situation. So they get away from the town and then they go off of the path. And this is where it cuts from it just kind of frustrated me and made me laugh a little bit because within the span of 2 paragraphs, it's and on the 5th day of their travels, I'm like, wait, what do you mean that in the span of 2 pages, 5 days have passed already? And it took us, I think, 7 chapters for 1 week to pass. And in the span of 2 pages, 5 days have passed, which I'm thankful for. I'm so thankful because things were moving so slowly, and I'm so glad that things are kicking off now.
It's like in SpongeBob when it says a several million moments later, when it has that little screen.
Yes.
One of the
3 days later.
I think in this part of the book might be the best line of the entire book, the best quote, when Strider says he knows a shortcut.
Yeah.
And Mary's like, or Pippin, I forget what, they're like, hope it's not like our last shortcut. That didn't work out too well. And Strider's like, quote, "My cuts, short or long, don't go wrong." I was like, what? What is this? My cuts, short or long, don't go wrong. Does he have to say that a lot that he came up with a rhyme for it?
I guess he did. And you know what? I trust him. It is Pippin who said, Pippin says, "Our last shortcut through woods nearly ended in disaster," aka them almost getting sacrificed by Barrow-wights.
Right,
I believe is the disaster he's referring to. I trust Aragorn / Strider, which I want also. Side note, I think it's interesting that it's revealed in the previous chapter that Strider is Aragorn, but Tolkien in this chapter is still referring to him as Strider. So I wonder if while they're traveling or something, maybe trying to like keep up his alias or whatever, about who he really is and everything. Maybe he only goes by Strider. I don't know. I just think it's interesting because I don't know much about Aragorn except that he is a big important character. And so I thought it was weird that they reveal that this is Aragorn and then immediately go back to calling him Strider.
Yeah, it is kind of weird how like they say his real name, but I don't know if it's just because everyone else calls him Strider that they keep referring to him as Strider. Then maybe later or at some point when Aragorn does become an important person, then they switch calling him from Strider to Aragorn. But I'm not sure. Yeah, it is kind of weird that they keep calling him Strider.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. But yeah, you're right. He says, yeah, my cut's short or long, don't go wrong. Which I don't think I realized until you read that out loud that rhymes. And it's a nice little, neat, nice little saying that I believe, I trust. Like if I saw a dude if I saw Strider in the woods and he, like the way he's described is like, he's this like tall being and I'm just imagining that he has like hair like Thor and he has a nice burly beard and he has this like sick cloak and he just looks like a mysterious all-knowing figure but who definitely knows what he's doing. Like if someone like that told me I know what I'm doing, I'd be like, yes, you do. I'm sorry I ever questioned you.
Yeah, I believe you.
So he is leading the way this entire time and let's see.
I've written down here in my notes so much uneventful walking at this point.
Yeah, it's a lot of uneventful walking, which I guess is, I mean, for the hobbits it's good, but for us as the reader it's not that fun. Like the most eventful thing that happens is they do make a note somewhere, or one of the hobbits is like, if they hadn't been running for their lives and if the impeding threat of the Dark Riders following them wasn't hanging over their heads, it would have been a really lovely walk.
That's right, yeah. It was a really nice day and it wasn't too hot, and other than the Black Riders trying to kill them.
And like they're just following Strider's way. Yeah, it's not, like forget about the impending doom that's following them and the evil ring that they're carrying with them. At least it's sunny.
Yeah, exactly.
Partly cloudy with a high of 75 degrees, exactly as Bob and Nob would say. Predicted on their radio show.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right though. Lots of uneventful walking. The most eventful things that happen basically is when they get to, I think it's on like day 4 or 5, they get to some marshes where there are a bunch of bugs that are really annoying. And
and they talk about how Frodo's losing weight as well. That was another eventful part of the walk.
Oh yeah. And so they get out of the woods and they get to the base of some mountain, and what they're trying to get up to is called Weathertop. They're asking what's up there, and then Strider pauses and I guess is thinking or is about to say something, and then it just says, suddenly a low voice murmured, and it's another song, which, side note, there are a billion songs in this series. Then it ends and it says, the others turned in amazement, for the voice was Sam's. And again, it's just another very like un-Sam-like thing that he's doing, where he's kind of coming out of his shell and is doing things to call attention to himself.
Yeah. He's like, okay, I guess I've been on the road with these guys for 2 weeks. I guess I can sing in front of them now. So. And
he sings about Gilgalad.
Yeah. You got it. Yep, that's right.
That's exactly it. Gilgalad. Sure, why not? Also, like later on, there's this story, there's Elven story, and I'm gonna mess up all of those names.
Yeah, that was one where like I read it and then I listened back to it and I was like, oh, that's how you say that. So you know what I mean? Say it.
And it talks about, let's see, Gilgalad is, I guess, an elven king or an old elven king. And this song that Sam is singing is one that Bilbo used to sing, or one that Bilbo used to help teach Sam writing and reading. And the other half of it has something to do with Mordor. And Pippin goes, going to Mordor? I hope it won't come to that. I'm just imagining, I don't know, there's a pause in the movie and then like Frodo does Jim looks at the camera on the office
at the camera.
But
yeah, and Strider knows what's going to happen. Like, I feel like Strider knows what they have to do with it. He was talking to Gandalf, and like he knows what they carry and where it has to go. So I feel like Strider would just like laugh at him, like, "Oh boy, here we go. What did I get myself into?"
It's also a little bit freaky because Strider has kind of like a Voldemort, he who must not be named thing with Mordor, where he doesn't even, like, throughout this chapter, he doesn't like it when the hobbits even mention the name Mordor.
Yeah.
Which is super concerning because at this point, Aragon is a different story. Aragon is about the boy who finds a dragon egg.
Yes. I was like, I know that, but I haven't seen. Yeah. That's different. It might be in the same universe, just somewhere else. It might be.
Maybe. The first Aragon book is very good. I remember trying to read the second one. I got about 3/4 of the way and stopped. And
3/4? You're almost there.
I know. I don't know what happened. And then I've heard abysmal things about the last book.
I feel like that happens in book series a lot.
I know.
I was big into the Maze Runner series, and I feel like that kind of went downhill as it went on, and the Divergent series went down as it went on. Like, I didn't even finish the last, whatever, Allegiant or...
Yeah, Divergent. Divergent.
Whatever the third one is,
is definitely one that goes downhill fast.
Yeah.
I won't even waste time talking about the movies because I remember going to see the second movie, and I think the second movie is supposed to end with like the death of someone, and that character didn't die in the movie, and I was like, well, that's the end of the third one, I think. Oh wait, yeah, it's like how the story ends. That's how Allegiant.
Not to spoil it for anyone who's just reading those.
You know what, guys?
The last one ends with, like, the main character dying. Yeah, like, the main character died.
And then the movie, they didn't kill her off.
They just skipped it. They just skipped it.
I think they were planning on making, like, a part 2, like Deathly Hallows part 1 and 2. And they never made the part 2 of the movie, which I think is wild. That they had this, like... I mean, it wasn't a huge franchise, but, you know, it was following...
I mean, the books were huge.
Yeah, the books are really... the books were, for the most part, pretty good and pretty popular. And it's kind of following in the footsteps of the Hunger Games, where you have, like, dystopian society, female lead. And it went south fast. So Aragorn... Yeah, so he doesn't like it when they say Mordor, and that's really freaky to me because he seems like this very strong, stable, capable person, and if even he is worried by the word Mordor, it must be a bad place. That does not bode well. So they stop off in a clearing or something, and Pippin and Sam stay with the horse and their stuff. And Frodo and Merry and Strider go to the top of this hill. Oh, I'm gonna go back for half a second. One of the nights where they are being, like, eaten alive by bugs and there are all these loud crickets and stuff, Frodo notices there are these flashes happening in the distance. And he asks Strider what that is, and Strider's like, I don't know. And immediately, Strider says, like, I don't know, but it kind of looks like lightning. And I was like, it's Gandalf. If it's lightning, it's got to be Gandalf.
Please let it be Gandalf. I hope it's a part of this story.
I was like, first of all, I hope it's Gandalf. But we know that, like, lightning and, like, fireworks and pyrotechnics and stuff are his thing. And so I just thought it was funny. We were like, I don't know what that flash of lightning is off in the corner where there's no storm at all. It's Gandalf.
It's gotta be.
So this theory is kind of sort of confirmed. So they come to the top of this hill where they find, I guess, stones and wood and everything that's been burned. Again, lightning. And they pick up a stone that has these markings on it. And one of the markings is a symbol for G, followed by 3 strokes. So it says G3. And they immediately jump to, oh, that's Gandalf, and it means that he was here on the 3rd day of October, which was 3 days ago. And I was like, I can understand how you see the symbol for G and you're like, oh, that's Gandalf. Cool, he was here. But the 3 could have meant anything.
Anything.
Like,
yeah.
They were immediately like, oh, yeah, obviously it means he was here on the 3rd day of October.
I think it's just wishful thinking that happened to be true.
Yeah.
Because Strider also says that rangers use those kind of signs all the time as well.
Yeah, and they keep asking him.
Like, it could have been a ranger coming
Yeah, they keep asking him, like, do you think this is Gandalf? He's like, I don't know. I mean, I guess it is. Perhaps it is. But the Rangers use symbols and signs like this all the time, too. So we just can't be sure. And we'll just have to keep going on as normal. And the flip side of it is that if it is Gandalf, it's like, okay, they're getting closer to Gandalf.
Yeah. I feel like when they see Gandalf, they could be like, hey, next time you're leaving us a note, maybe just like flip your wrist like a second time and like write a full sentence.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Like, Gandalf was here and the actual date. Like,
Gandalf was here, W-U-Z.
Yeah, it was.
Or, or something else, maybe like an arrow pointing in the direction that they should walk.
Yeah, really.
Or, maybe add like a W for west, like head westward.
Right.
Or who knows? But so they go down and meet the other. Oh, so while they're up here, they look up and they say, or they're looking around. And I guess that's why this place is called Weathertop, is because you can see everything. So I guess you could theoretically see, like, if there's a storm approaching, you could see the weather approaching. I don't know.
And they call it has a specific name, right? The, like, ruined area, Amon Sul or something.
I'm sure
what it is?
you are right. Because it used to be a watchtower. Yes, you're right. Amon Sul, they called it. It was burned and broken, and nothing remains of it now but a tumbled ring, like a rough crown on the old hill's head. Yet once it was tall and fair. It is told that Elendil stood there watching for the coming of Gil-galad out of the west in the days of the last alliance. Yeah, so this used to be some kind of, I guess, fortified watchtower defense, and something happens or something happened that made it crumble, and is now, I guess, just this, like, wasteland area. And so they're looking around to see where they're going, and they say, well, how far is Rivendell? And what's his name? Strider says, oh, probably, like, I don't know, 10 to, 14 days away. And he goes, a fortnight? A lot can happen in 2 weeks. And it's like, I said, yes, I should hope a lot happens, because otherwise it'll just be like, and then they went to bed. And then when they woke up, they ate a meager breakfast that wasn't enough to fill them, and then they got on the road again, and then there were some bugs, and then that, like...
Yeah. They headed west into the valley and north over the hills of wherever.
So I was like, yeah, I hope a lot happens. Like, I can't do this for much longer of just reading along as they're walking through the woods with nothing of substance happening.
Again, though, it's like Frodo is saying a lot can happen in a fortnight, in... whatever it is, 12 days. Just a couple chapters before, he was just hanging out in the Shire for how long?
Oh,
it's
that's
like,
so
a lot
true.
can happen in a fortnight, yeah.
That's
It's like, well,
so
why didn't you
true.
think that same thing back when you're in the Shire? But
wow, that's so true. Yeah, because at this point, he's only been, it's probably at this point, I think, been a week and a half, about 2 weeks since he left Hobbiton.
Yeah.
So
now he knows a lot can happen.
Yeah, a lot can happen. That's for sure. I know I'm going to be, like, eating my words later on, where, like, a billion things happen, and then, like, 12 people die, and then, I don't know, the Black Riders get the ring, and they steal Merry and Pippin. I'm going to be like, wait, no, go back to when they were just, wandering
Walking
in the woods.
Having a rainy day with Tom Bombadil.
Oh, yeah. So they go back down to meet Sam and Pippin, or wait, who was with them? Yeah, Sam and Pippin were with the horse.
Yeah, Sam.
And then they kind of make camp for the night. Oh, actually, so while they're still up on top of the mountain, they see 3 shapes, and they're far enough away that they can't exactly make out what it is, but given the fact that the writers have kind of always been referred to up until this point as, like, oh, there were 3 of them, and we see 3 black dots on the trail heading towards them, they're like, it's probably the riders, so we'll make camp over here. And Strider says, Yeah, so they're all concerned. They're like, well, shouldn't we, like, you know, get out of here if they're coming towards us? And Strider's like, no, we'll be good for the night. We'll be by a fire. And he is like, no, the Black Riders don't like fire. We'll be safe as long as we have the fire near us. And Sam says, maybe it is also a good way of saying, here we are, as I can think of, bar shouting. Which is funny because they also, in the earlier chapters, the writers found them because they were all singing loudly and, like, talking loudly. And Sam is like, I can't think of a better way for them to find us, you know, by putting up a fire, rather, you know, other than, you know, shouting or
what
singing
we did
loudly.
Already.
Yeah, we've, you know, what we did a week ago. Strider gives us a little bit more information about the writers at this point. And Mary says he asks if the writers can see because up until this point, there have been a lot, when we've seen the writers up close and personal, there have been a lot of notes about, like, they seemed to sniff the air and smell. And my theory is that, oh, they're blind and they operate by sense of smell. And it's kind of like that. They, it says, for the black horses can see, and the riders use men and other creatures as spies, as we found in Bree. They themselves do not see the world of light as we do, but our shapes cast shadows in their minds, which only the noon sun destroys. And in the dark they perceive many signs and forms that are hidden from us. Then they are most to be feared, and at all times they smell the blood of living things, desiring and hating it. And then it also, this it says, his voice sank to a whisper. The ring draws them. So essentially, they've been carrying around with them a black rider, a dark rider magnet. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I like how it says, what was the part about they can smell the blood of living creatures? What does it say? Something, it, and hating it? What does it say?
Desiring and hating it. Yeah.
And hating it.
Ultra creepy.
And I was trying to think why they would hate it, but I guess it's because they're like, I don't know if they're like undead beings.
Yeah.
And yeah, they are like jealous of living creatures being alive and not undead and whatever.
Yeah. No, I think that, that totally makes sense. That they are, I guess, in between worlds, or they're under. So I think at this point, I don't know. This hasn't been confirmed yet in the book, but I think someone told me that the Black Riders are ring wraiths? Question mark? I don't know. Don't come.
Yeah, I don't think it says it in the book.
Don't come
at
for
this
me.
Point.
Don't come for me if that's not true. But so we know that the ring wraiths are controlled by the ring. So I guess if these beings are, they don't have free will and they're not fully human and they're not fully living beings. So yeah, they desire it says the blood of living things. So they desire to be a living thing, and then they also hate that they aren't.
Going back to when Strider doesn't like to talk about Mordor or say the word Mordor, when Frodo's talking about how skinny he is, he talks about himself, if he keeps going like this, he's going to turn into a wraith. And Strider's like, don't say that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's just like, so.
Yeah.
It makes sense that they would be called.
Yeah, Strider's like really superstitious almost about all this, which, you know what? At first I was like, okay, Strider, like, let's calm down a little bit. It's not that big a deal if we say Mordor. But at the same time, he's the one who's been out in the world surviving, doing like manly man things in the woods. So if he says not to say Mordor or Wraith, like, maybe we should not say those words for the betterment of the group. So they make camp for the night, and to kind of calm them down, Strider tells them, basically it's like he's telling the hobbits bedtime stories to get them to go to sleep. He's telling them all of these old tales and everything, and it makes the hobbits wonder exactly how old is this guy and how does he know all of these. He knew many histories and legends of long ago, of elves and men and the good and evil deeds of the elder days. They wondered how old he was and where he had learned all this lore, which kind of adds to the mystery of Strider, since we don't know much about him at this point. And then he goes into the tale of fish. What's her name? Tunavale.
Yes, that's right. The last one you said.
Good Lord.
Tenuvial.
No, that sounds right.
I think that's how my audiobook said it.
So he goes into the tale of Tenuvial, who is an elf that a mortal man basically stumbled upon as he was fleeing. So the man's father was killed, and he stumbles upon Tenuvial, and they fall in love, I guess. And then there's some other battle. The man dies, and Tenuvial decides to give up her immortality and dies along with him, which one, I guess, is it's like a cool side note that I guess elves are able to give up or choose whether or not they want to be immortal. And two, I don't know if I was an elf with immortality. I don't know if I would exactly give that up.
Yeah, I think, well, someone else will probably come along. I can, forget about this Baron guy.
Yeah.
Right, that was his name, Baron.
Yeah.
Seeing this, like, super long chant or whatever,
yeah.
I wondered, in some of your other episodes you talked about, like, is it important that we read all the songs? And this one I was like, oh, it's really long. It's probably important. And then you get to the end of it and Strider's like, so basically, here's what happened. I'm like, oh man, I just wasted all that time reading that story, reading that song when Strider just gives like the synopsis in like 2 paragraphs. I was like, oh,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, Strider sings the song and tale of this legend, or if this actually was a real elf long ago. And that, yeah, you're exactly right. And then immediately when it's done, he talks more about what happened.
Yeah.
So... and the other thing is that, like, you don't actually need this story. I mean, you know what? I'm going to stop myself there because who knows if this will pop up again later on. Like, who knows if, chapter 22 and 2 Towers, they're like, and
remember Tenuvial?
It's like in Monty Python. It's like in Monty Python, they reach the guy on the bridge with the 3 questions, and they ask, and one of the questions is, what was the name of the elf who gave up her immortality to die with mortal man?
Well, I think it's interesting that Strider told this story. I'll just say it that way.
Ooh, cool.
So I had not remembered that he told this story, but it may come up. I'll just say that without giving too much away.
Yeah, all of my talk about, we don't really need to know this story because it has nothing to do with the plot. I mean, I did note, I was like, this doesn't exactly seem like the best story to tell for like bedtime. Like he's trying, the whole reason that he's
die at the end.
The reason he's telling these stories and legends and everything is to kind of take the hobbits' minds off of everything and calm them down. And then he tells this story about the elf who fell in love with the man, and then the man dies, and then she dies. Isn't that fun, children? All right, nighty-night.
Nighty-night. Sweet dreams.
But they don't get to go nighty-night because, dun, 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 I think Sam and Mary, or 2 of them go off somewhere for a second right before they're about to go to bed, and then they come running back and they're like, we looked up on the mountain and we saw these 3 people. Do you think it's the same 3 people that have been following us? And then they start flipping out, and a lot of things happen very quickly for a book where it takes forever for like one thing to happen, but and the 3 riders approach the hobbits, and Merry and Pippin fling themselves to the ground and cower in fear, and Sam like clings to the side of Frodo, and Frodo puts the ring on.
Yeah.
Ooh, and it's just
big mistake.
It's so crazy now because there are every now and then there's like a little like Tolkien will speckle in these comments where it crosses Frodo's mind that he could put the ring on, but he doesn't put the ring on, or the temptation was almost irresistible and his hand was around the ring. And this point, it is completely irresistible. As soon as the thought as this is happening, his friends are cowering next to him, fearing for their lives. He isn't even thinking about them. He immediately, all he can think about is the ring and putting the ring on.
Yeah.
And he does it without a second thought, which, like you said, was a big mistake.
As I was reading it, I was like, oh, it's kind of interesting. Because like you said, there's other times where he got close, but he was always able to resist. But this time, he wasn't able. And it says, he was quaking as if he was bitter cold, but his terror was swallowed up in a sudden temptation to put on the ring. The desire to do this laid hold of him, and he could think of nothing else. He did not forget the barrow, where before he was about to put the rings on, nor the message of Gandalf, who said don't put the ring on. But something seemed to be compelling him to disregard all warnings, and he longed to yield. Not with the hope of escape or of doing anything, either good or bad. He simply felt he must take the ring and put it on his finger. So it's not like he did it out of like, if I put this on, they won't see me. Or if I put this on, I'll be able to like attack them. It was just like, it was not for a reason other than just he had to put it on.
Yeah, it was the only thing he could think about.
Yeah.
And it's so creepy and ominous. And So then it says, he was able to see beneath their black wrappings, and their white faces burned keen and merciless eyes. Under their mantles were long gray robes. Upon their gray hairs were helms of silver. In their haggard hands were swords of steel. Their eyes fell on him and pierced him as they rushed towards him. That's so creepy. So the ring, the ring, surprise, surprise, the evil ring gives Frodo the power to see to see the evil beings more clearly and fully. And it's extra creepy. I don't know what Frodo is thinking in this moment. So he gets up and has his little sword, and which, by the way, I think so. Tom Bombadil gave the hobbits their quote unquote swords, but I think what he gave them are actually like normal human sized daggers, or something like that. Like they're like knives that for hobbits are swords. So it's not even like Frodo is attacking them with a sword; he's attacking them with like a knife,
right?
Which. There's no way that could do much damage. And second of all, Aragorn is right there. I don't know why Frodo's like, I'm going to fix all of this by hitting these evil people with my tiny knife. And then he is overcome by this, I guess. Oh, so it says, and he heard himself crying aloud, "Oh, Elbereth, why did I decide to read this part? He calls out two elves' names. Let's put it that way, which we haven't met at this point. I'm assuming they're elves' names.
Okay. I had no clue.
Elbereth and Gilthaniel. Sure, let's go with those. He calls them out, which we haven't heard of or met those people or beings or figures yet. So I guess some kind of trance took him over when he attacked them. I don't know. And he felt a pain like a dart of poison ice pierce his left shoulder. Even as he swooned, he caught, as through a swirling mist, a glimpse of Strider leaping out of the darkness with a flaming branch of wood in either hand. Which, man, what an image. Strider just jumping out with sticks on fire.
Well, where was he before that? Like, I just picture like,
I guess he was running off to get branches to set on fire. I don't know.
So guys, hold on. I'll be right back.
That was kind of what I was wondering. Is like, okay, protector, an all-knowing person that has thankfully found these 4 children. Where did you go? And so he jumps out at the last second, which thank the Lord that they decided Strider could join their party because he saves them all.
That would be the end.
Yeah, and that's...
But he stabs him in the shoulder. Like, why?
I know, I just don't know what Frodo thought he was... I mean, he obviously wasn't thinking clearly because he was under some influence of the ring or some influence of something else, because he calls out these elves' names or whoever's names, and Strider comes out and attacks them, and Frodo takes the ring off and I guess passes out and collapses. And that's how the chapter ends.
That's it.
It's very, I'm so thankful that like a lot happened in this chapter.
Yeah.
Like things.
Especially in like the last like little bit there.
Yeah.
It starts to get cool.
Yeah, like not only have they like, it's like, oh, right, there's a new character with us. They're traveling at a much faster pace. They are learning more about where Gandalf is and kind of trying to track him down, and they're becoming closer to him. And meanwhile, the evil is becoming closer to them. It's all great. So it's funny because I've had a lot of people ask me, and some friends mentioned, like, I don't know how you're reading this book 1 chapter at a time. Like, if it were me, there's no way I would have the self-restraint to stop and prevent myself from reading the next chapter.
Right.
And normally it hasn't really been a problem up until now. Like, this was the first time where I started to read the next chapter, and I was like, wait, I have to wait until I record for this episode, and then I can read the next chapter. So I'm excited. And also it's very exciting because the next chapter, chapter 12, is kind of like the mid-season finale for Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah.
Because the books are divided. It's so confusing and I feel like unnecessary. The books are divided into books. And there's basically like part 1 and part 2, and chapter 12 is the end of part 1, which I've been told, fingers crossed this actually happens, but I've been told that they finally get to Rivendell at the end of book 1 of Fellowship, so let's hope that happens.
I can't give anything away.
Which is, I think it's funny because I'm like, boy, oh boy, if they are supposed to get to Rivendell by the end of book 1, they have a lot of ground to cover within the next 25 pages.
Yeah, because they say it's like a fortnight away.
Yeah, it's 2 weeks away. So what I'm thinking might happen is that we'll just do like a time jump ahead to when Frodo wakes up and he's magically in Rivendell.
Yeah, another on the 5th day then. Another one of those a few moments later type of deals.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this chapter. What would you like to plug?
Well, I do have a podcast of my own. It's called A Sorta Star Wars Podcast. And we talk, it's probably about 50% Star Wars and then like everything else. Talk about, I have a couple other guys that come on. We talk about parenting and dadding, and then we talk about Marvel or whatever else is going on. So yeah, thanks. It was really fun to do this.
Cool. Where can people find you on the internet or find your podcast on the internet?
Well, the podcast you can find wherever you listen to podcasts, where all the major ones, and then on Instagram and Twitter, we're at Sorta Star Wars.
Man, how'd you get that handle for your podcast?
Good, right?
So you can find That's What I'm Tolkien About on Twitter and Instagram at Tolkien About Pod, which I wanted so badly to get the handles. I've been using the acronym TWITA,
right?
TWITA. That's what I'm Tolkien about. And I wanted so badly to have that handle, Twitterpod, just because that sounds so much fun to say, like, oh, you can find the podcast at Twitterpod, but that's not what it is.
You talk about when you're going to be done with That's What I'm Talking About, what your podcast name is going to be after that, right? I think I had some ideas here, okay? I think first one is Say What. I think it would be a good podcast name. What's Up or Who Knows What.
Those are good.
I think consider those. Consider those when you come up with a
Say
podcast
What,
name.
but I feel like I would say it like, Say What?
You have to. There's no other way to say it.
That's so good. You know what? Side note, I might also steal that and take credit for that to propose it as an idea for my brother's wedding hashtag.
Yeah, that's good.
Say what?
That's good.
That would be.
Say what?
And there's also a 1 in a billion chance that any of my family members are still listening at this moment.
Perfect. Yeah, I get that a lot when mine go longer than like half an hour, which they almost always do. I'm like, you don't understand having a podcast. It's impossible to keep it like under 20 minutes. Like, I don't know how people do it, but like you just get talking.
I know. Yeah, I'm having a hard time because I started out everything trying to keep episodes. Well, it's funny because first I was like, oh yeah, episodes are going to be 45 minutes. And the first episode, I struggled to get it down to an hour. So I was like, okay, I'll keep them around an hour. I don't know. It's just so hard when you get to editing it because it feels like you're cutting out so much fun parts. Like there's one episode where my friend and I spent 10 minutes talking about like video games and Nintendos and Zelda, and I made myself cut all of that out because I was like, it adds 10 minutes to the episode length and it has nothing to do with Lord of the Rings. But
that's some of the best stuff too.
Yeah, and probably like a good portion of what we're currently talking about isn't going to make the final cut. Where was I? Yes, That's What I'm Talking About is a production of Bacon and Eggs. You can learn more about that at baconandeggs.media. The cover art is by Vaishon Brandon. aka Graphite. Go support him on Instagram at graphite.vmb.
Awesome picture.
Good stuff.
Yeah, awesome
Good
picture.
stuff. Yeah, so you can find, like I said, you can find the podcast on Instagram and Twitter at Tolkien About Pod. You can find me on Twitter at MCWatt416 and on Instagram at MCTurnDownForWatt. And also, just a special shout out to Tyler, Carlin, and Emily. Congratulations on the birth of your daughter.
Congratulations.
Olivia came into the world today on the same blessed day that Patrick Swayze and Andy Samberg were also brought onto this earth. So it's a good day.
One of the most important days in history.
Yes.
For sure.
It's a good day, Olivia. Congratulations. Yeah, that's so exciting. So, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to add?
No.
Sounds good to me. And that's what I'm talking about.